Yet he is the witness of material cause and effect. Yes, yet he is always free from false identification with them. By his internal energy, he dispels the darkness of separation and confusion. The individual souls in this world, who are manifested here when he glances upon his material creative energy, indirectly perceive him in the activities of their life airs, senses, and intelligence. And verse 12 is, all sins are destroyed, and all good fortune is created by the Supreme Lord's qualities, activities, and appearances, and words that describe these three things animate, beautify, and purify the world. On the other hand, words bereft of his glories are like the decorations on a corpse. Purport today, very short. Srila Sridhar Swami brings up the following possible objection. How can one who is devoid of ordinary ego, who is fully self-satisfied, engage in pastimes? The answer is given here. Lord Krishna acts on the pure spiritual platform for the pleasure of his loving devotees, not for any kind of mundane gratification.
Hare Krishna.
Om Agyanatimirandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savarutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Ska Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute excuse me, I'm leading. Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Turubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschachade Shatarine Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Garim Jatkripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurundi Natarinam. My apologies for being a little snappy there. But I get a little impatient at times when we gather together to chant prayers and it's just a gabble, a race to the bottom, as far as I can see. These prayers are very meaningful and they are meant to be resonated in a certain way, not to be gabbled through. And I'm a little older than most of you, so my breath is a little different. So don't mind. I didn't mean to be nasty. But I can be. Okay, there's something very important here today. This verse, all sins are destroyed and all good fortune is created by the Supreme Lord's qualities, activities, and appearances. And words that describe these three things animate, beautify, and purify the world. On the other hand, words bereft of his glories are like the decorations on a corpse. So there's two kinds of sound vibration. One is called perfective, and the other is called defective. Perfective sound is what is being described here in this verse. Words that describe the qualities, activities, and appearances of the Supreme Lord. Well, it's very complex. It's very layered here. The qualities, activities, and appearances of the Lord destroy all sins, and all good fortune is created by the qualities, activities, and appearances of the Lord. Then, on top of that, the words that describe these qualities, activities, and appearances animate, beautify, and purify the world. This is perfective sound. On the other hand, there is what is called defective sound. Defective, per means towards, and de means away from. So, fective, fection, perfection, confection, defection. Fection means, comes from the Latin. I forget the actual. Could you get my phone, please? I'll come back to this in a minute. Out of that little bag out there. Perfective sound does this. It animates and beautifies and purifies the world. And because we are conscious entities in the world, then if we become exposed to this perfective sound, then we will become animated, beautified, and purified. So beginning with the animation, we can now begin to talk a little bit, on the other hand, words that are bereft of the glories of the Lord are like the decorations on a corpse. So all of our lives so far, up to the point where we come in contact, there it is, with this sound vibration, all we've been hearing is defective sound. So just in time, we got the meaning of it. Per means to accomplish, or to complete, or to go towards. And Facere from Latin is to make or to do. So to go towards something, to make something, to put something somewhere, to do something is perfection. Whereas defection is to go away from these things, to go away from something. Confection is to converge on something, concentrate. So sweets are a concentration of something. So defective sound has a degenerative effect on our consciousness. And therefore, the first thing that here is described is that words that describe the qualities, activities, and appearances of the Supreme Lord, first of all, animate us. Because words bereft of his glories are like the decorations on a corpse. So we are exposed to defective sounds in this world. Everything in this world is broken, breaking, degenerating. And we see this is happening in this age, especially the degeneration of consciousness into more and more animalistic activities, more and more animalistic conditions of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Because the object, as is explained here, is sense gratification. Sense gratification. It's the rage across the nation. Sense gratification. Enjoy, enjoy, enjoy. That's like the catchword now. Everywhere you go, especially into food places. And what is it? I'll grab that. I'll grab that. I'll grab that. It is a grab bag. Grab bag of what are they? Crisps. Grab bag. There are 12 billion packets, crisp packets, disposed of every year in the United Kingdom. People come in, I'll grab that. What for? Instant gratification of my senses. It's not even food. It's not even really food anymore that we're eating. But it's all, get this sensation, get that sensation. And then the news we hear, oh, big sensation. And it's all to do with eating, sleeping, mating, defending, fearing, and gratifying the senses. The difficulty with this is that it always spirals down. Addiction that arises from this defective process causes us to need more and more and more of whatever it is that we're addicted to get anything out of it. More and more and more ingestion for less and less taste. And that leads to very ignorant activities, just like sex and violence. Sex and violence. If sex life is not engaged in for the proper purpose, then it will eventually degenerate into violence because of frustration. Contemplation of the objects of the senses leads to lust for those things, and the lusty engagement with the objects of the senses is never what we expect it to be, and what we are looking for, the taste that we are looking for, doesn't come from there, and so therefore that lust becomes transformed into wrath, and then the violence begins. And then in the eating and the sleeping and the defending, the same principle is there. Everything degenerates into violence upon oneself and violence upon others. Actually, in one of his definitions of ahimsa in the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says simply to cause confusion is violence. And this was stated in this previous verse. By his internal energy, he dispels the darkness of separation and confusion. This sense of separation, too, is also an act of violence. Because actually, we're never separated from Krishna. We just forget it. But still, he's maintaining us in every way. We're always actually in contact with Krishna, but we don't know it. In the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says, Krishna is always present before us as this material energy. This material energy is Krishna's energy. And actually, there is no difference between the energy and the energetic. We divide Krishna's energies into different categories to develop a certain understanding of them. But from Krishna's point of view, it's me. Vasudeva Savamiti. The problem is forgetfulness of Krishna. And as that forgetfulness expands in the world, then the only conception that we have available to us is energy. This is all energy. And you quite often hear some impersonators say, God is just energy. God is just the energies. There's no person. There's just the energies. And so in mundane scholarship, mundane inquiry, that's what we're doing. We're following the clues about this energy, that energy. We're just dealing with the energies. This is what Gyan is about, dealing with the energies of the Lord. And then we have the verse, Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanavan Man Prapajate Vasudeva Savamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. After many, many births of cultivation of knowledge, one who is Jnanavan, one who has the understanding that, well, yes, there's all these energies and they're working in this way and that. Then he's introduced to Bhakti Gyan. And Bhakti Gyan is based on the principle, as Krishna says, Vasudeva Savamiti. There's nothing separate from Krishna. The separation is an illusion in our minds. That's how the material energy works. It's a separated energy. It's a separating energy. And we have entered into it and come under the influence of it. And it begins, as I keep saying over and over again, it begins with the covering of false ego. We become covered by false ego. And then we're in. We're in the material world. And we hear things. Actually, hearing is the most important thing in life. I don't know if I told this story here before, but several years ago now, I was doing a program with a sangha of deaf devotees. Now, they call them deaf or hearing impaired and so on. There's all kinds of different language. But when I was a child, someone who was deaf wasn't just called deaf, they were called deaf and dumb. Of course, there's a pejorative on dumb, meaning you're stupid. But dumb means you can't communicate verbally. So anyway, I was at this sangha, and the way you do a sangha with deaf people is you sit and you speak, and then there's a very efficient devotee sitting here who knows sign language. So everything you're saying, he's signing to the people, like, this is Krishna. No, I said Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So he's doing the sign. It's quite strange, actually, because you're looking at all the people and they're all just looking at him. And it's completely silent. It's completely silent. Like they just sit and they look. So anyway, at the end, I said, any questions? And then one person puts up his hand and he signs his question to the speaker, and the speaker tells me. And my response was, oh, you can read about that in, and then the man who was hosting the program, he was standing behind me and he leaned in, he said, they can't read. Everybody can read. He said, no, he said, they can't read because they can't hear. Yes. What? And then you analyze that. How do we learn language? How do we learn? By hearing. And then we go to school, or a parent sits down. You go to preschool now. You got to go to preschool. You got to be efficient in reading and writing and mathematics and everything before you're 3 years old. I saw an ad for that in Watford just recently. Preschool for 2 to 3 year olds, proficiency in reading, writing, and mathematics. What? Anyway, if you can't hear, you can't speak. But also, therefore, you can't understand when the teacher writes on the board, A, B, C, D. That's how the alphabet starts. E, O, O, E, A, O, U, all these sounds. And then she starts, or he starts to say, this means T. There's a symbol. This means A. This means S or K. So then you have the cat sat on the mat. So then everybody repeats, the cat sat on the mat. And then the teacher will say, now we'll write something else up. And you just mouth the sounds. So that, okay. Now we'll put something else up. Now you just read that. Don't move your lips. Don't make a sound. Just read it. So then you're in. You're cursively reading. But this is just sound vibration in another form. And if you can't hear, you can't read it. So hearing is fundamental to learning anything. Fundamental. So then what do you hear? You hear all nonsense. I am an Australian. Did I ever tell you that little story? I did it in the feast here last time. When I was a little boy in school, I don't know what you went through, but this was in the 1950s. We all got lined up in the schoolyard every Friday for an assembly. The flagpole was there. The flag was run up, all bundled up with the drums. Gets to the top, they pull the string, the flag unfurls, and we all have to put our hands on our hearts and say, I am an Australian. And then I honor her flag. And then back on that, I promise to obey her laws. I can't remember anymore, but it went on for quite a while. And this gives me a conception of what I am, who I am, where I am. Of course, I was in Australia, well, 300 years ago. It wasn't called Australia. What was it called then? Well, that's another thing. That was another conception based upon what the people heard then. So our conceptions and our ideas of ourselves are all based upon what we hear. And it's very interesting here that the hearing of the qualities, the activities, and the appearances, first of all, animate the world and animate us. Why do we need animating? Because the defective sounds that we hear de-animate us, bring us down into a torpid, ignorant state of life. And then beautify and purify. We become animated, beautified, and purified by hearing transcendental sound in relationship to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his devotees. But if we don't hear that, then we become de-animated, uglified, and degraded by the sound vibrations that we are exposed to. So, having said that, I wanted to say a little bit more about different verses from the early part of the Bhagavatam about the nature of transcendental sound. Very powerful things are said. And there's an equation between the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Mahamantra. At the beginning of the second canto, in the first chapter, we encounter Sukadeva Goswami at the end of the first canto. In the 19th chapter, he arrives, and everybody on the banks of the Jamuna accepts this is the person we should hear from, because Parikshit Maharaj has asked a very important question. He says, what should one do when he is on the threshold of death? There's a lecture where Prabhupada speaks on this, and he starts the lecture by saying, so Parikshit Maharaj is asking, what should one do when he is on the threshold of death? And he pauses for a moment and he says, and who is not on the threshold of death? When are you going to die? How are you going to die? Where are you going to die? Nobody knows. Nobody knows this. Actually, you go to an astrologer and you ask that, can you tell me when and where and how I'll die? They say no. They'll say there's possibility of sometime here, sometime there. But they can't give you the exact moment that you're going to die. Nobody knows this. But on the other hand, everybody knows this is going to happen. But on the other hand, we live in denial of this. We live in a death-denying society. I remember years ago, Satsvarup Maharaj wrote an article when he was the editor of the BTG. He always used to write an article, the editor's article. And when he turned 40, he wrote an article on turning 40. And he said, turning 40 doesn't mean you're going to have to cut back on how many sets of tennis you play every weekend. And he goes through a whole list of material things. He says, it means you're going to die. And Krishna says it. For one who has been born, death is certain. Death is certain. So this is what the whole Bhagavatam hinges on. Parikshit Maharaj is cursed to die. He's fortunate. That's the other thing Prabhupada says there. He says, Parikshit Maharaj is very fortunate because he knows I've got 7 days and then I'm going to die. And Prabhupada says, we don't even know whether we have 7 seconds. We don't know. We don't know. This is very important. This is a real, as they say, a wake-up call. We got to wake up to the fact that this is just an illusory existence. We think, oh, I'm going to live forever. or when death comes, I'll avoid it. I was with a god sister a few years ago, and we were heading off somewhere. She had a daughter and a teenage daughter and teenage friend in the back, and my god sister wanted to top up her mobile phone, and she didn't know how to do it, and I just happened to look in the rear vision mirror, and the daughter's going, and I said, well, you might run into this one day. She said, nah, we'll keep up with the technology. Sure you will. Sure you will. We thought we were really flash when we had transistor radios. We thought we were really flash when we had Bakelite radios instead of these big things in the corner with the big dial and the big valves, 4-6 inch valves. Yeah, who can keep on top of technology the way it's changing? Nobody can keep on top. But we think, oh, I will. I'll keep on top of it. I'll keep ahead of the curve. And the same thing about dying. Or actually, it won't happen to me. Now that's when in Mahabharata, when Dharmaraj creates a situation where the four Pandavas, Bhima, Arjuna, Sakula, and Nakula and Sahadev, they drink from the poison lake and they go into a total torpor. They appear to be dead, and Yudhishthira arrives, and there's the snake, who's actually Dharmaraj, Yudhishthira's father, and he's there. He's to test his son. He says, if you can answer 5 questions correctly, then I will bring them back to life. Otherwise, they're finished. And one of the questions is, what is the most wonderful thing in the world? And Parikshit's and Yudhishthira's answer is, the most wonderful thing in the world is a man will see that his father has died, his grandfather has died, his father before him has died, and so on for so many generations in the past, all have died. Even he may see that his own son has died. And this is what happens with Dhritarashtra. 100 sons are killed. And still he's living, thinking, oh, I'll just carry on. Won't happen to me. So it's a very important thing. And this is what the whole recitation of the Bhagavatam hinges on. So then we have Sukadev Goswami appear. And he starts to say some very powerful things in response to this question. And he says, your question is glorious. Your question is glorious because it is beneficial to all kinds of people. Rich man, poor man, beggar man, thief, it doesn't matter. You're all going to die. Just on Easter weekend and over Christmas, I don't know if they do it here, but like in Australia and in America, I've seen this too. It's more complex in America because they do it. Australia's got 6 states. America's got 50 states. And so over the Easter, they have the road toll on the roads. And they'll say, so many people were killed in New South Wales, so many people were killed in South Australia. But in America, it's like you're looking at 50 states. The death toll. And we've got to bring the death toll down. But what is the death toll on planet Earth? 100%. And it's not just the human beings. It's every species. There's that beautiful psalm that says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. This is where we're at, folks. Welcome. Welcome to the valley of the shadow of death. So, therefore he says, your question is glorious because it is very beautiful to all, very beneficial to all kinds of people. The answer to this question is the prime subject matter for hearing. And it is approved by all transcendentalists, those persons who are materially engrossed, being blind to the knowledge of ultimate truth, have many subject matters for hearing in human society, all defective. The lifetime of such an envious householder is passed at night either in sleeping or in sex indulgence, and in the daytime either in making money or maintaining family members. Persons devoid of Atma Tattva do not inquire about the problems of life, being too attached to the fallible soldiers like the body, children, and wife. Although sufficiently experienced, my father has died, my father before him has died, although sufficiently experienced, they still do not see their inevitable destruction. O descendant of King Bharat, one who desires to be free from all miseries must hear about, glorify, and also remember the personality of Godhead, who is the Supersoul, the controller and the savior from all misery. The highest perfection of human life achieved either by complete knowledge of matter and spirit, by practice of mystic powers, or by perfect discharge of occupational duties, is to remember the personality of Godhead at the end of life. O King Parikshit, mainly the topmost transcendentalists who are above the regulative principles and restrictions take pleasure in describing the glories of the Lord. Then he says, at the end of the Dwapara Yuga, I studied this great supplement of Vedic literature named Srimad Bhagavatam, which is equal to all the Vedas, from my father, Srila Dvaipayana Vyasadeva. O saintly king, I was certainly situated perfectly in transcendence, yet I was still attracted by the delineation of the pastimes of the Lord, who is described by enlightened verses. Then he says, that Srimad Bhagavatam I shall recite before you, because you are the most sincere devotee of Lord Krishna, one who gives full attention and respect to hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, achieves unflinching faith in the Lord, unflinching faith in the Lord, the giver of salvation. Then he says something very, very apparently contradictory. He says, O king, constant chanting of the holy name of the Lord, after the ways of the great authorities, is the doubtless and fearless way of success for all, including those who are free from all material desires, those who are desirous of all material enjoyment, and also those who are self-satisfied by dint of transcendental knowledge. What is he saying here? There is total equivalence between the holy name of the Lord and the Srimad Bhagavatam. There is no distinction, there's no difference, because these are all on the absolute platform. Prabhupada says, anything to do with Krishna is Krishna. At the beginning of the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains to Arjuna, now you hear from me, now just hear from me, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. And in the purport, Prabhupada makes an astounding statement. He says, knowledge of the absolute truth is Krishna. Knowledge of the absolute truth is Krishna. Not knowledge of the absolute truth is knowledge about Krishna. It is knowledge about Krishna. But anything about Krishna, anything to do with Krishna, is Krishna. There's no distinction. So that's a very important point to understand. There is no difference between the chanting of the holy name and chanting of Srimad Bhagavatam. But then we get some very beautiful reflections on the chanting of the Bhagavatam from, and therefore reflections on the chanting of the holy name. No different. From Pariksit Maharaj at the beginning of chapter 8 of the second canto, which is called Questions by Maharaj Pariksit. He asks many questions, but he begins with a little preamble by saying, I wish to know narrations concerning the Lord, who possesses wonderful potencies, are certainly auspicious for living beings in all planets. O greatly fortunate Sukadeva Goswami, please continue narrating Srimad Bhagavatam so that I can place my mind upon the Supreme Soul, Lord Krishna, and being completely freed from material qualities, thus relinquish this body. Persons who hear Srimad Bhagavatam regularly and are always taking the matter very seriously will have the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, manifested in their hearts within a short time. Then these two beautiful verses. Pravistakana Randrena Swanam Bhava Suroruham Dunoti Shamalam Krishna Shalilasya Yata Sharat Dautatma Purusha Krishna Pada Mulam Namunchati Mukta Sava Pariklesha Panta Swa Sharanam Yata. The sound incarnation of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Soul, that is Srimad Bhagavatam, or the Holy Name, enters into the heart of a self-realized devotee, sits on the lotus flower of his loving relationship, and thus cleanses the dust of material association, such as lust, anger, and hankering. Thus, it acts like autumnal rains upon pools of muddy water. A pure devotee of the Lord whose heart has once been cleansed by the process of devotional service never relinquishes the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, for they fully satisfy him, as a traveler is satisfied at home after a troubled journey. This is perfection. This is perfective sin. And this cleanses away all of the dirty things in the heart. Shrinvatam swakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana pridyantasto yabhadrani vidunoti surit sata. The Supreme Lord is the super soul, the Paramatma within the heart of every living entity. And he cleanses away the desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the truthful devotee. He cleanses away the desire for material enjoyment. That's the root of the problem. The desire for material enjoyment. The desire for material enjoyment put under or put in the pressure cooker of the three modes of material nature, especially the mode of passion, gives rise to unlimited desires for material enjoyment. So you've got to go to the root. They have a tree in Australia now called camphor laurel. It's a Chinese tree. It was introduced into Australia. It's what you get camphor wood from. They make furniture out of it. And you get naphthalene flakes and all kinds of stuff. But it's like when you introduce a species like that into an environment where there's no, like they said, there's no predator to it, there's nothing to stop it. It just proliferates like anything. Like there's this little plant here in England called lantana. Does everybody know lantana? A beautiful little bush. You see it in gardens all around England. Beautiful little bush with beautiful little. It has a mixture of orange and yellow and white petals, little florets, and it's a bunch of them in a beautiful decoration for deities. And it's a lovely little bush. But when it got introduced into Australia, it grows in a subtropical situation in Australia. It's not a little bush anymore. You get one plant becomes as big as this room, and then it drops its flowers, and then before you know it, you've got a huge forest of it. Same thing with camphor laurel. The point I'm getting at with camphor laurel is uh, uh, you can cut it down. But within no time, its root system is all under the ground, and from every root you get shoots coming up. Before you know it, what was one tree is 50 trees, and then you can cut them down, and then it just comes up again more and more. And before you know it, you've just got this one huge tree with so many trunks. And what you have to do is you have to dig down around it. And it's got a very interesting root system. It has three main roots that go into a tap. And you can't dig down to the tap, which is right down there. They merge into one root very deep in the ground. So you have to cut those three roots. And as soon as you cut it off from that, it dies. So this is the point. There's the desire for material enjoyment is deeply embedded into the heart of every living entity. The long cherished desire to dominate the material energy and enjoy. It's all an illusion. You cannot enjoy the material energy because it's not yours to enjoy. There's the story of the thieves who they got a big booty, all jewels and money and everything. They ran off into the forest. And then they started fighting. They started fighting about it. I want this, I want that. And the leader of them stands up and says, now, gentlemen, we have to divide this fairly and honestly. You just stole it. You're thieves. So we're thieves in the material world. We're thieves. We're stealing what is not ours. None of this is ours. First verse of Ishopanishad. Everything in this universe, everything, animate and inanimate. And animate and inanimate, concrete and abstract. Everything is owned, well, it's controlled and owned by the Lord. So we're trying to get control and claim ownership of something we can never get control of and never own. And Prahlad Maharaj says this is hoping against hope. It is a hope that will never be fulfilled. Never be fulfilled. And in this process, we hear, oh, I got a plan. Oh, sounds like a plan. Let's do that. And on and on and on and on it goes. And as a result of that, more and more and more entanglement in the repetition of birth and death in the material world. And it is endless. It's endless. There's no material solution to these material problems that arise as a result of this desire for material enjoyment. But the verse is very good. Shrinvatam swakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana. by hearing Krishna Katha. Krishna Katha, what is it? It is words that describe the qualities, activities, and appearances of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And these words animate, beautify, and purify the world. And whoever hears them, whoever gives submissive oral reception to this. So how does it work? Shrindatam swatata Krishna punya shravana kirtana hridyantasto hyabhadrani vidu noti suritsatam. Hridyantasto, that which is standing in the heart. What is it? Abhadrani, these inauspicious, dirty things that are in our hearts as a result of acting on this desire to enjoy in the material world on the basis of hearing the wrong things and taking notice of these things and becoming indoctrinated and conditioned by these things. This is what it means to become a conditioned soul. Over and over and over and over again, we've been hearing the wrong thing. But vidunoti surit satam. The Surit, the Lord, the Supersoul, the dearmost friend of every living entity, is in the heart of every living entity. And he says, as Krishna says, Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Hriddesh. Hriddesh, in the Desh means the field, in the field of the heart. I am sitting in the field of the heart. Ishvara, so I am the controller. I am the controller of everything. And I'm sitting within the heart of every living entity. And I am directing their wanderings on the basis of their desires. I'm directing their wanderings. So we've been wandering aimlessly around, running around in this Bahiranga Shakti, this external energy of the Lord for a very, very long time, under the chaperoneship of the Supreme Lord. You want to go here? You want to go there? You want to go in? I'll take you there. And our deal when we enter the material world with this illusory energies, you can take me anywhere. Just give me pleasure. Take me anywhere. Just give me pleasure. And this has been going on, practically speaking, since time immemorial. In one sense, this is how eternity works. We have not been eternally in Maya, but we are eternal. So we're either we're eternal in a liberated situation, or we're eternal in a conditioned state. Either way, we see it as, well, this is the way it is. This is it. So we accept the repetition of birth and death. Oh, you got to accept the good with the bad. You have to just make the most of it. Enjoy while you can. Enjoy yourself. It's later than you think. Enjoy yourself. And this is the merry dance that people are on in the material world. But Krishna has brought us to this, to hear this. Very important. Hear this and keep hearing this, because that will reshape, that will transform our consciousness. And how it happens is described by the word vidunoti. Vidunoti means to cleanse by sound. My very, very dear friend, my very dear departed friend, Mahavishnu Goswami. Did you ever meet Mahavishnu Goswami? Yes? He was a very, very wise old man. And he used to, when I first went to Soho Street Temple to serve there in 1983, he was living there he was a vanaprastha, and he was very, very austere. He was a disabled person. He had some spinal problem. He twisted back, and anyway, he used to live very, very humbly and very austerely. If you go to the roof of the Soho Street Temple, and when you come onto the roof, you turn left, and you walk out onto the roof, and there's storage cupboards there. And there was one storage cupboard was about as high as the altar and about 2/3 as wide and maybe half as deep again. It was just that what you'd throw buckets and things into. So he cleared one of them out and he lived in that. And he slept on a straw mat in the walkway. And every day, it would be at the morning program every day, he'd be chanting, and then he'd sit down in front of the deities every day and read Srimad Bhagavatam. And he knew Sanskrit. He used to teach the devotees Sanskrit. And he was very comical, very funny man, very, very self-deprecating also. But anyway, he explained one time in a class on this Srimvatam Swakata Krishna verse, the meaning of vidunoti. And there are two physical manifestations of what are called vidunotis. There's a musical instrument called a vidunoti. It's a very simple thing. It's like an ektar, but it's quite large. It's got an upright, solid piece, and then quite a long piece, and then quite a strong one string. And the string is about this far from the wood. And people with this kind of vidunoti, they go around the houses and they do their call. The call you get is usually like, "Nyep." And people come out, people know they bring out their cotton mattresses. So if you have a cotton mattress and you sleep on it regularly, the cotton gets compressed. So a mattress might start out that thick, but it's down like this and it gets hard. So people bring out their mattresses, and then these guys sit there. One of them's pushing the mattress through, another one's pulling it as it comes through. The other one's twang, 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 twang with this cord, and it's hitting and vibrating in this sound vibration, and the cotton starts to puff up, and then through comes, and then they got their mattress back. So that's on a small scale. Then in the cotton fields, they have big sheds, very big sheds, and they'll have a bow like Lord Shiva's bow. Lord Ram breaks Lord Shiva's bow. It's a huge bow, and he just snaps it. So they have this big bow that goes all through the shed and extends through a hole outside the shed, quite a distance. And then there's a very strong cord drawn very tight. So the whole thing's somewhere about the middle of between the roof and the floor. And then the people, they pick the cotton buds. And when you pick cotton buds, there's like, the cotton is in a hard shell. When the cotton, before it buds, you get this really hard shell comes up. And then that gradually cracks open and it becomes brittle and it starts to break away. The wind drop makes it fall off. But there's little pieces of it still there but there's the cotton ball. You pick the cotton ball. There's little pieces of this there still. And there's dust and there's insects that come there and die. And so it's all just thrown in the bag, and they bring that and they throw it all into this shed. And they pack it up in the shed. So this cord disappears in the pile of cotton. And the floor of the shed is chicken wire. So then once it's all packed up, they close the doors, and then at either end, outside the shed, they start beating out a raga by hitting this chord. And then you see these things. And there's another thing you see in India where if you've ever been where they have little children who are doing the knotting, the fine knotting on the carpets and things. They do it while there's a raga playing. They do it to the rhythm of a raga. It's amazing. So anyway, they're beating out the raga on this thing, and it's setting up this sound vibration inside the shed. And of course, that causes the cotton to start to puff up. And then as it puffs up, it becomes lighter, and then all the stuff that's attached to it is heavier, and it starts to fall down through, and then when it gets to the floor, it falls through the chicken wire. So I don't know how long they know how to do it, anyway, at a certain point, they open the doors and there's just a big ball of fluffy white cotton. So if you think of both of those instances as your heart, and then you think about how this sound vibration is affecting your heart. It's a transformational process. It's a transformational process that we have to give time to. You have to give your time to this. This is what the human form of life is for, to give your time to this process based upon the hearing and the chanting of the qualities, activities, appearances of the Supreme Lord, which animate, beautify, and purify you. And there is no difference between this and the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. I think that's about all I wanted to say this morning. Leave a bit more time for questions and answers or reflections on anything. Does anyone have any questions or reflections?
We can maybe go to the devotees in Zoom first, because there's a lot more devotees in the room than Zoom, and we went to the room first yesterday. So if anybody on Zoom has anything, please raise a physical hand or a digital hand, and we can come to you. But if not, we can go. There we go, there's Manjwali.
Hare Krishna, Manjwali.
Oh, just hang on a second.
Hang on, and we've got to get your volume up.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for a wonderful class.
Hold on a second. Still not loud enough. Hold on.
You're very quiet this morning for some reason, but I'm putting the volume right up on our side now. So please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I really like the last point. The whole class was lovely, but I like the point that you said about the sound vibration affecting our heart, and it being a transformational process, and also about how we have to give time to it. We have to make time to hear the right things from the right source, because I think it's really easy to become busy listening to the wrong things, or just becoming busy and not taking time to read, to hear properly, because it does affect everything that we do. Because I find, for example, when I'm around devotees, it just makes me so happy. And when I'm not with devotees, you can feel this change in your heart. So it was a really nice reflection for me about, again, sort of looking at what are my priorities, and what can be changed to get my priorities correct, so I hear the right sounds. You're mentioning perfective sounds. Yeah, because I think if you don't reevaluate what you're doing and how you're, living, you kind of can identify things that may be exposing you to defective sound. So I appreciate the kind of reflection. Well, your talk sort of highlighted things for me, and I appreciate it. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, there's nobody else on Zoom, so the room has the floor. Please go ahead.
I had a tiny little reflection.
Ah,
The Camp Laurel that you spoke about made me think of the banyan tree in the Bhagavad Gita. How we have to cut down this deeply rooted, strongly rooted tree with a weapon of detachment, which ultimately is hearing and chanting.
Hare Krishna. You brought up a good point about hearing and chanting and detachment, because this is where the impersonalists fall down, because they think attachment means, or rather detachment means going to nothing. Whereas you can only become detached from something that you're attached to. So attachment comes before detachment. So the need is to be attached. We need to be attached. That's why we become attached to the wrong thing, because we need to be attached. So detachment means to shift your attachment from the wrong thing to the right thing. And that's where the hearing process works, because we've become attached to the wrong thing by hearing about it. That, you brought up a fantastic point, actually. In the second chapter of the first canto, where Sutta Goswami is beginning his answer to the 6 questions. Well, he actually answers all 6 questions in chapters 2 and 3. But there's a very important verse here. Tasmad, well, he talks about hearing actually in a number of, you can read this all for yourself, but I'll just come to the ultimate verse in the sequence, where in verse 14 he says, Tasmad ekena manasa Bhagavan Sattvatam Pati Shrotavya Kirtitavyas Cha Jaya Pujas Cha Nityada. Therefore, with one pointed attention, one should constantly hear about, glorify, remember, and worship the personality of Godhead, who is the protector of the devotees. That's a very important caveat at the end, because people will say, well, if you just spend all your time hearing and glorifying, remembering and worshipping Krishna, who's going to make the world run, and how will you eat? And all. Because Krishna is the protector of the devotees. That's how you come under Krishna's protection. And it's a short purport, but I'll read it. It's very important. And this very important point comes out of this purport. If realization of the absolute truth is the ultimate aim of life, it must be carried out by all means. In any one of the above mentioned castes and orders of life, that's the verse before, talks about the Varnashram system. The 4 processes, namely hearing, glorifying, remembering, and worshipping, are general occupations. Listen to this. Without these principles of life, no one can exist. Our whole existence comes about as a result of what we hear about, glorify, remember, and worship. Activities of the living being involve engagement in these four different principles of life, especially in modern society. All activities are more or less dependent on hearing and glorifying. Any man from any social status becomes a well-known man in human society within a very short time if he is simply glorified, truly or falsely, in the daily newspapers. Prabhupada wrote this 60 odd years ago when it was newspapers. Now we got social media. How many followers have I got today? People can be hearing about me and glorifying me and remembering me and worshiping me in the millions. But what use is it to them? I'm just another idiot, conditioned soul. Sometimes political leaders of a particular party are also advertised in newspaper propaganda, and by such a method of glorification, an insignificant man becomes an important man within no time. But such propaganda by false glorification of an unqualified person cannot bring about any good, either for the particular man or for the society. There may be some temporary reactions to propaganda, but there is no permanent effects. Therefore, such activities are a waste of time. The actual object of glorification is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has created everything manifest before us. We have broadly discussed this fact from the very beginning of the Janmat Yasha sloka of this Bhagavatam. The tendency to glorify others or hear others must be turned to the real object of glorification, the Supreme Being, and that will bring happiness. Hare Krishna. Hearing about, remembering, glorifying, and worshipping will go on endlessly. But if you take God out of it, then the list is also endless. And it's all useless. You go into any newsagent and have a look at how many magazines are there about so many topics, and people are reading these things. I mean, in Australia, they got a big problem with feral pigs.
Just that he looked at me when he said that.
What's that for me?
They got a big problem with feral pigs. So there's a whole subculture now of feral pig shooters. So there's a magazine about it. There's a magazine about it. So the subjects are endless in the material world. I remember when I was a kid, there was a program on TV called The Naked City, and it was about policing in New York. And every week was a different story, and they'd end up with the voiceover. There was a narrator, and at the end of it, as they're running the credits of the show, the last thing he'd say is, "There are 8 million stories in the naked city. This has been one of them." I was thinking, geez, we've got 8 million episodes to go. And meanwhile, the population's increasing. There's 15 million people in the naked city. There are 15 million stories here. This has been one. Everybody's got a story. What's your story? Everyone's got a story. And what happens when people get together? And what's this whole social media and everything about? You get down to it, you go to meet somebody for a coffee and they say, "Did you hear about it? Did you hear what happened?" And you all know what? No. It's all about, what did you hear about? So you need to be under the shelter of persons who are hearing and can repeat the right things to you. And that's a very important point right at the beginning of the Bhagavatam, when Shonaka Rishi is he's the head of the Sangha, and they've accepted this is the name of Sharanya. He's the most experienced man there. But they've all agreed previously that Sutta Goswami should be the person who speaks to them in answer to their questions. So he's glorifying Sutta Goswami, and he ends by saying this: "Na tvam na sandashito datra dushtaram nishtitiyashatam kalim sattva haram bhusam kana dhara ivanavam." We think that we have met your goodness by the will of providence, just so that we may accept you as captain of the ship for those who desire to cross the difficult ocean of Kali, which deteriorates all the good qualities of a human being. So captain of the ship, the Sanskrit word given here for captain of the ship is Karna Dhara. Dhara means to hold. So you have Krishna's name is Venudara. He holds the flute. Or Giri Govardhan. What do they call it? What's he called in New Govardhan? Govardhanadari. He's the holder of Govardhan Hill. Dara, Dari, the doer, the holder. And from that comes Dharma, that which holds us in place. So Dara means hold. So, and then Karna. Karna Dara is translated as captain. Now you think about a ship, right? From time immemorial, right up to the present day, you have to listen to what the captain is saying. And it always, and the captain's announcement is, they do it now, you see it on the tannoys on ship. Now hear this. Now hear this. You don't see the captain. You're all over. There's 5,000 people on an aircraft carrier. And the captain, and there's an intercom system all over the boat, everywhere. And every now and again, the captain will say, now hear this. And everybody stops and listen. And that goes all the way back to, you know, the little Mayflower with the little raised deck at the back. Now hear this. And everybody knows you've got to listen to the captain. If you don't listen to the captain, you're in mutiny. And we're all in mutiny. We're all mutineers here. We've all mutinied. And now we have to just give our ear over again to the right thing. Now hear this. Yes.
It's interesting that when Srila Prabhupada went to meet, he hesitated, but then he went with his friend to meet his future spiritual master.
Yes.
And what he said to Prabhupada.
Yes.
He said, didn't he say something about you hear well?
No, that was later when he took initiation. But he, first of all, Prabhupada argued. Bhaktisiddhanta was talking about, we got to spread Lord Chaitanya's mission. And Prabhupada was arguing because he was a follower of Gandhi and they were all after independence from the British. And he said, no. We're a subject nation. We have to become independent first. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta just destroyed the argument. He said, no, it's too urgent. The situation is too urgent. Lord Chaitanya appeared in the middle of a Muslim empire.
What did he say?
So then and Prabhupada said he defeated me. He defeated my argument. And then he said, that night I accepted him as my guru. Not officially, but in my heart. There was a transformation took place in Prabhupada's heart that night, simply by hearing from the sadhu.
What did he say to Prabhupada then when he said,
Oh, and then Prabhupada visited Srila Bhaktisiddhanta when he was on a parikram in Vrindavan, and he was just there for one night. And so he just sat in the tent listening to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And at a certain point, some people got up and walked out while Bhaktisiddhanta was speaking. And he said, "Where are they going?" Bhaktisiddhanta said, "Where are they going?" They said, "Oh, they're going for darshan." He said, "No, they should be here, hearing. It's more important to be hearing than to do anything else in devotional service. You can't do devotional service unless you hear about devotional service, unless you hear about the benefits of devotional service. You hear about the potency of devotional service. And how do you do that? By doing devotional service through hearing. Devotional service, hearing about devotional service is devotional service. So our devotional service begins by hearing about devotional service. So then, and Prabhupada didn't leave. And then, there's a beautiful description in Satsuru Maharaj's, in the Lilamrita. It says, the next morning, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta left. He got in a car and drove off. And there were hundreds of people there to see him off. And the last sentence is, and Abai was one of them. Just another face in the crowd. But then, some years later, when he was recommended to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta for initiation, not through some letter, but directly, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was there, and somebody said, "This is Abhay Charan. He's ready for initiation." And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, "Yes, I have marked him. He likes to hear.
yeah,
I have marked him."
yeah,
So we can never underestimate the potency of what we've got ourselves involved in here.
he heard him and he did what he was,
Huh?
he heard him and he did what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta wanted him to do.
And then you see Prabhupada's life from that. He took those instructions to heart in 1922. And again, just before Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, "You preach in the English language." And then in 1933, is it 33? I can't, no, 36, when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta left, only 3 years after Srila Prabhupada had taken initiation. Just before, a couple of weeks before Srila Bhaktisiddhanta left, Srila Prabhupada wrote to him and said, you have many disciples, and I am one of them. And he said, then, is there some service for me? And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta wrote back to him and said exactly the same thing he said to him 14 years before. He said, "You preach in the English language." He said, "I have every faith," and this is important. He says, "I have every faith you can mold yourself into a very good preacher. Mold yourself into a very good preacher." I might not have that, might be verbatim, but it's mold yourself. And you preach, and that will be good for you, and that will be good for others. And so then, 1936, Srila Prabhupada really did not get the opportunity to preach again until he got the storefront in New York in 1966. So for another 30 years, he had to carry those instructions in his heart. And he made so many attempts to do something, and they all failed. But then you read about how he used to go to the house of Advaita Acharya in Navadvip. And as a grihasta, he would sit there and chant. for hours and hours and hours, chant japa in the house of Advaita Acharya. And there's a story years later from the Pujari was there. He said this Grihastha used to come. He would just come and he would sit for many hours and he would chant and he would go away. And I would wonder, why is he doing this? What is he doing? Why is he doing this? Where's he from? And then he said one day he came and he was a sannyasi. He was not a grihastha anymore. He was in the dress of a sannyasi. But then he said, I used to observe that he would be chanting and tears would be flowing from his eyes. So when he came as a sannyasi, he said, I spoke to him that day and I said, who are you? No, he didn't say, no, he didn't speak to him then. He saw later somebody gave him a Back to Godhead magazine. And he saw Prabhupada there. He said, this is that person. He used to come and he used to cry. Oh, he did see him as well. Sometimes it's hard to remember all the details. He did speak to him. And he said, why have you been doing this all these years? He said, because my Guru Maharaj has given me an impossible task. And I come here to get the blessings of Advaita Acharya that I may be able to fulfill my Guru Maharaj's instructions. So for 30 years, he molded himself. He molded his heart. He went through from a transformation. Of course, we understand. He's an eternally liberated soul, just like Arjuna. But Krishna put Arjuna into confusion and bewilderment. So Prabhupada was put into this world in the way he was put into this world. And he went through what he went through before he met his Guru Maharaj. And then from then on, there was a transformation. There was a fundamental transformation in the core of his heart, right from the beginning. But then he had to mold it. He had to work it and come to the point where, like he said, by the time I left to go, I realized it was everything for Krishna and nothing for me. And in that way, he's the Acharya of ISKCON. This is what it means. He's our Acharya. And people say, oh, you were so fortunate. You saw Srila Prabhupada. You met Srila Prabhupada. Yes. That might be true. But I haven't seen Srila Prabhupada for 50 years. So what's the connection? You hear him. You hear him, that's all. You just hear him. You don't have to have met him face to face. Actually, you hear him, and I guarantee you will meet him face to face. That's a fact. That's a fact. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, everyone. Lovely, lovely reflections. Stick with it, folks. Never give up and always show up. Don't know what shape you're in. Doesn't matter how bent out of shape you may become by the influence of the material energy. That's a given. That's a given. Krishna doesn't care about that. He knows what you think you might understand the material energy? We got no idea what she can do to us. But Krishna knows. Nobody knows the material energy like Krishna. Nobody has the wherewithal to help you like Krishna. And nobody has Krishna's compassion. And Krishna is known by the name Bhavagrahi Janada. Janada means he who dwells in the heart, and Bhavagrahi means he takes only a notice only of the essence of a devotee's devotion. in the core of your heart, you surrender to Krishna. You can't fudge it. Sincerely and seriously, you surrender to Krishna. You don't have to broadcast it to anybody. You just do it, and you know you've done it. And Krishna says, Lord Chaitanya says, quoting Lord Rama, it is my vow that one who only once sincerely and seriously surrenders to me, saying, my dear Lord, from this day I am yours, and prays to me for courage, then I will immediately give that devotee courage, and he will be safe from then on. So do it. No one can do it for you. You have to do it yourself. And you may forget that you've done it. So do it again tomorrow. Do it every day. It's a great thing to wake up to. You roll out of your bed, bow down, or in your heart at least, you say, my dear Lord, from this day on, I'm yours. And don't turn back. Don't look back. Don't turn back. It's all going to be there. It's all the same. It's not going to get any better. It's just going to be getting worse. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
Grace Bhagavat Shraddha ki Jai. Grace Savamangala Mataji ki
Jai.
Nitai Gaura Premanande. So thank you for joining us on Zoom, and Zoom wise we'll be back at 7:55 on Wednesday to start the week, 7:55 for a class by Srila Prabhupada, and 8:30 to continue our journey through the very wonderful pages of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And for the devotees that are near Folkestone, there's more to come. His Grace Bhagavata Shraddha and Her Grace Savamangala Mataji will be with us for this afternoon's Sunday feast program. So 3 p.m. Harinam on the streets of Folkestone, and 4 p.m. for the start of the program. But in the meantime, we wish you a very happy and peaceful few hours in your Krishna consciousness until we see you next. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Shishi Palad Singha ki Jai. Shishi Nitai Gaurasunda ki Jai. Shrimati Tulsi Devi ki Jai. Vaishnav Seva Vaishnav Sangha ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanande. Hare Krishna. See you soon.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna.